When Earth vanished overnight, the galaxy panicked because humanity hadn't just left. They'd taken the entire solar system with them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives from 14,000 species filled the massive amphitheater, orbiting the neutron star Kepler 442, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that would have driven a human insane. Ambassadors Xthar of the Hegemony Prime raised all 6 of her crystalline appendages, calling for order. Silence. Her telepathic voice boomed across the chamber. We are here to address the situation with species 7834. Designation: Humans of Earth. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The humans, those impossible, terrifying, wonderful creatures, who had joined the Council only 50 Earth years ago and had already turned galactic civilization upside down. Holographic display activated, showing the last transmission received from Earth's representative. Ambassador Sarah Chan. Her image appeared larger than life, her face set in that peculiar human expression they called determination. The recording began to play. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council. Sarah's voice was steady, betraying none of the emotion that the empathic species could feel radiating from her. Even through the recording, humanity hereby formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, we renounce our membership, our obligations, and our protections under galactic law. The chamber erupted. Beings that communicated through color changes flashed angry reds and panicked yellows. The gaseous ethereals condensed into tight, anxious spirals. Even the normally stoic rock speakers of Titan Prime began their slow, grinding sounds of distress. The recording continued. We thank you for the opportunities you provided, but we can no longer operate within the constraints of your bureaucracy. Humanity chooses to forge its own path among the stars. We withdraw not in anger, but in necessity. Our species requires room to grow, to explore, to become what we are meant to be. Sarah paused, and for just a moment, that human smile appeared, the expression that had both charmed and terrified the galaxy. Don't worry about us, we'll be fine. We always are. The transmission ended with coordinates being broadcast, not to Earth, but to empty space at the edge of the solar system. Then, nothing. Complete radio silence from the Sol system for the past 37 standard galactic days. Ambassador's Xthar's voice cut through the chaos. Report. Intelligence Division, Commander Veltar of the Oversight Fleet materialized via quantum link, his reptilian features grave. The situation is unprecedented. Council members' long-range sensors confirm that the entire Sol system is gone. The question came from a dozen species simultaneously. Not destroyed. Veltar clarified, quickly relocated. The humans have somehow moved their entire star system, all 9 planets, the asteroid belt, their constructed habitats, their moon. Everything they've left behind, only empty space. And this, another hologram activated, showing a simple sign floating in space where Earth's sun used to be. Written in the common galactic script were 2 words: gone fishing. The silence that followed was deafening. How is this possible? Whispered the delegate from the academic consortium. Moving a star system requires technology beyond even the first builders. The humans always claimed their physics were different. Xthar mused, her crystalline form dimming with worrying. We thought it was primitive stubbornness. We never considered. She didn't finish the thought. But every member of the council was thinking the same thing. The humans hadn't been primitive. They'd been operating on principles the rest of the galaxy had never imagined. Trade Master Quillox of the Merchant Guild stood, his tentacles writhing in distress. Council members, we have a crisis. 17% of all galactic trade was either with or through human space. Their shipping companies handled 43% of hazardous cargo transport because they were the only species crazy enough to do it safely. Define safely. Requested the actuarial intelligence. They had a 99.7% success rate on deliveries. That other species had a 30% survival rate attempting. Quillox replied their pilots would fly through asteroid fields, solar flares, and gravitational anomalies while drinking something they called coffee and listening to rock music. We thought they were insane. They were insane, confirmed Dr. Hexus, the council's chief synapsychologist. That was precisely what made them so valuable. They performed tasks we considered impossible because they didn't believe in impossible. They had a psychological condition they called optimism that bordered on delusional. The implications were staggering. Human courier services had connected isolated systems. Human terraforming techniques had reclaimed dead worlds. Human music had somehow become popular across 47 different species, despite being composed by creatures with completely different auditory systems. What about the Void War? Asked General Krextos of the Defense Corps, his armored shell clicking nervously. The humans were our front line against the Dark Fleet incursions. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. The humans had been the only species willing to engage the nightmare entities from dark space in direct combat, while other species used careful tactics and overwhelming numbers. Humans had developed something they called aggressive improvisation, essentially making up solutions to impossible problems in real time while being shot at. Their success rate had been terrifying in its effectiveness. We have to find them, declared Ambassadors Xthara. The galaxy needs humanity, whether they realize it or not. The search effort that followed was the largest cooperative endeavor in galactic history. Every ship, every sensor array, every deep space monitoring station was recalibrated to search for signs of the missing human system. They looked for energy signatures, gravitational anomalies, anything that might indicate where an entire star system had relocated itself. He found nothing. Days turned to weeks. The galactic economy began to fluctuate as trade routes dependent on human services collapsed. Courier deliveries to dangerous sectors simply stopped. No other species was willing to risk the routes. Humans had made routine terraforming projects ground to a halt without human expertise in making things work that shouldn't work. Most troubling of all, Dark Fleet incursions began probing deeper into civilized space without the humans' aggressive response. The nightmare entities were growing bolder, perhaps, suggested the philosopher king of the meditative cluster. We should consider why they left. What did we do to drive away the one species that never asked for anything but freedom to be themselves? The answer was uncomfortable. The Galactic Council had spent 50 years trying to make humans more like everyone else, more careful, more predictable, more civilized. They had imposed regulations on human exploration, limited their territorial expansion, and constantly criticized their reckless approach to problem-solving. Humans had responded by doing what humans always did when told something was impossible. They found a way to do it anyway. 3 months after the disappearance, Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega-7 detected something impossible, a radio signal from outside the galaxy itself. Transmission was brief, crackling with interference from the intergalactic void. Hey, Council. It's Sarah. Just wanted to let you know we're doing fine out here. Found some really interesting neighbors in Andromeda. Don't wait up. We might be gone for a while though. And tell the Defense Corps that the Dark Fleet isn't actually from dark space. They're refugees from something much worse. You might want to try talking to them instead of shooting. Works better than you'd think. Humans out. The signal faded, leaving behind only the faint echo of what sounded suspiciously like human laughter. The Council's xenobiology experts worked frantically to analyze the implications of Sarah's message. If the Dark Fleet entities weren't invaders, but refugees, then the entire galactic defense strategy was not only wrong, but potentially catastrophic. Krextos was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. How did they know? We've been fighting the Dark Fleet for centuries. How did the humans figure out in 50 years what we couldn't discover in millennia? Dr. Hexus pulled up the psychological profiles they'd compiled on humanity. Look at their approach to first contact protocols. When they encountered something new, their first instinct wasn't to establish defensive positions or wait for backup. They tried to communicate. Remember, first contact with the crystalline entities. Every other species assumed they were hostile because they absorbed energy. The humans brought them music, and it worked. Whispered Ambassadors Xthar. The crystallines became our greatest allies. The pattern was undeniable. Humans approached the unknown not with fear, but with curiosity. They assumed the best instead of preparing for the worst. It was a fundamentally different way of existing in the universe, and it had worked in ways the Council was only beginning to understand. 6 months passed. The galactic economy had adapted, barely, to the absence of human services. But the real impact was psychological. The universe felt smaller somehow. Less full of possibilist forms that had flourished under human influence began to stagnate. Scientific progress slowed as researchers lost access to human intuitive leaps, the seemingly impossible ability to draw correct conclusions. From insufficient data, even entertainment suffered as beings across the galaxy found themselves missing human storytelling. With its bizarre focus on ordinary individuals accomplishing extraordinary things, children of various species were perhaps most affected. Human educational exchanges had introduced concepts like imagination games and what-if scenarios. Young beings across the galaxy had learned to dream bigger, to consider impossible solutions, to believe that they could change the universe if they just tried hard enough without human influence. That spark was dimming. Breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The Dark Fleet had begun probing the former location of the Sol system, sending increasingly complex signal patterns toward empty space. The linguistics division finally decoded the messages. They were attempts at mathematical communication. Basic first contact protocols. They're trying to talk to the humans, reported Chief Linguist Vorthik. The Dark Fleet entities have been trying to establish communication with humanity for the entire duration of what we thought was a war. The implications were staggering. Every attack had potentially been an attempt at contact, misinterpreted through the lens of fear and defensive thinking. The humans, with their instinct to communicate first and ask questions later, would have recognized this immediately. Ambassador Zexthar made the decision that would change galactic history. Open a channel to the Dark Fleet. Use human first contact protocols. The response was immediate. The entities that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries replied with what could only be described as relief. They were indeed refugees, fleeing from the collapse of their home dimension. They had been trying to ask for help, for sanctuary, for simple acknowledgement that they existed and weren't just mindless destroyers. War ended with an apology from both sides and an offer of asylum that was gratefully accepted. A year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council had transformed. The human approach to problem-solving had become mandatory study for all diplomatic corps. First contact protocols were rewritten to prioritize communication over defense. The phrase, "What would humans do?" had become so common it was abbreviated in official documents as WWHD. But they still couldn't find Earth. Every technological advance, every new sensor array, every breakthrough in physics yielded nothing. The humans had vanished so completely. It was as if they had never existed, except for the changes they had left behind in every species they had touched. Maybe, suggested the young aide to Ambassador Zexthara, they don't want to be found. Maybe that's the point. The thought was disturbing. Had humanity left not just to explore, but to escape the very beings who now desperately sought their return? 5 years, 3 months, and 17 days after their departure, the humans came back. There was no fanfare, no advance warning. One day, the Sol system simply reappeared in its original location, as if it had never left. The only indication that time had passed was a small addition to the original "Gone Fishing" sign. Good trip brought souvenirs. The souvenirs turned out to be representatives from 17 different galaxies, including several that operated on physics so alien that their very presence expanded the Council's understanding of reality. Humanity had spent their absence doing what they did best, making friends with things that should have been impossible to befriend. Ambassador Sarachen's first transmission to the Council was typically human in its casualness. "Hey, everyone, we're back. Hope you didn't break anything while we were gone. We brought some new friends who'd like to join the party also. We may have accidentally solved the heat death of the universe while we were out there. We'll share the details at the next council meeting. Oh, and thanks for finally figuring out how to talk to the Dark Fleet. We knew you'd get there eventually." The Galactic Council chamber was larger now, expanded to accommodate representatives from 19 galaxies and dimensions. The humans sat in their original seats, looking pleased with themselves in that uniquely human way. Ambassador Zexthara called the session to order. "We have much to discuss, but first, why did you leave?" Sarah chanced, her smile both apologetic and unrepentant. "We needed room to grow. The galaxy was getting too small for us. and we could see that our presence was making everyone else comfortable with limitations. You were starting to think that the impossible was merely difficult. We couldn't let that happen, so you left to prove a point. We left to prove that there are no points to prove. Sarah replied, the universe is infinite, possibility is unlimited, the only boundaries are the ones we accept. We went to find new impossibilities to make possible, and to remind ourselves that home is only special if you choose to come back to it. She gestured to their new galactic neighbors. These beings have technologies and perspectives that will revolutionize everything we thought we knew, but more importantly, their friends help each other grow beyond what they thought they could become. The session continued with presentations that redefined the nature of reality itself, but the real lesson was simpler. In a universe of infinite possibility, the greatest tragedy was in the unknown. It was the failure to embrace it. Humanity, in their typically roundabout way, had taught the galaxy that lesson by temporarily taking themselves out of the equation. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it was better when humans were in it, making the impossible seem routine and reminding everyone that the best response to the unknown wasn't fear, but an enthusiastic let's find out what happens next. In the end, that was the most human thing of all, turning even their own absence into a teaching moment for the rest of the galaxy. This HFY story celebrates humanity's greatest strengths: curiosity, optimism, and the refusal to accept limitations. In the grand tradition of science fiction, it uses the backdrop of space to explore what makes us human, and why those qualities might be exactly what the universe needs.